But first, we need to throw it over to our panel and hear their thoughts about Volskaya.
Well, if Zealots are a Cinderella story, Kaldar, I feel like the shoe fits for Zealots. They have figured their drafting out, and they look strong.
Yeah, they definitely are. And I think a lot, again, is because they play here on home turf with AD, RD, and Mopsio being from Poland. So it works really well for them. Both of them are highly motivated, and it shows in their play. From game to game, they get better. They learn from the previous series, and they just had a fantastic showing on map 1.
Vandy, Tempo Storm started that game out strong, sort of like the Cursed Hollow game versus Team Dignitas. Where did things start to go out of control, in your opinion?
I see when I look at Zealots playing this, they're using the same tactic roughly every time. And it really centers around that Blaze. I was just saying, we might start to see some Blaze bans starting to come out. What they do is they've always got that Blaze opposite to where they're trying to rotate. It's that classic 1-4. But what happens is it becomes even more intense on Volskaya Foundry when you get the Protector and win it. So what they do is they're playing the map, but they're also playing the objective. And they're just really utilizing the pressure that Blaze can give. He's just, as I said, you waste time when you're trying to gank him. He's got a lot of sustain. And then when he's needed, they just ask for the rotation. So I see it time and time again. In Tempo Storm, they held on, definitely yes, but they just didn't have an answer for that, much like other teams.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, Tempo Storm has played versus some Garroshes before, but Mopsio seemed to make quick work of them. Is that what you've got to show us?
I mean, it's actually Shad. I feel like this is the real turning point of the game. Can you pause right here?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, pause. So Arthas in the middle of the air. But what is it? Can you keep it paused? So the bold thing about this shot call, right? So for Zealots, they're down. Look at this. They are down a hero. What the? They're down a hero. So they're potentially walking into a 4v5, which is just a very bold call, right? Generally, you know, HOTS 101, okay, you don't ever want to fight if you're down a Talenteer or down a hero. But, you know, Zealots recognizing, okay, they're going to have at least 1% on the objective, and I think the Malfurion was backing. We're going to go in there and punish Tempo Storm. So start playing it slowly. Basically what happens is Mopsio gets the flip over, but watch Shad here on the Stukov. He's going to hit a 2-man root and silence, and just they instantly are able to blow up both of those heroes. Shad making a huge play, because if Shad doesn't hit that 2-man root, this slowly turns into a 5v4, right? Malfurion, Tyrael, Genji, they all rotate over, and you found yourself in a very sticky situation, and this is really where the Zealots start to snowball the game. They get that top Punisher, which allows them to get the next Talenteer before Tempo Storm.
There's a couple of things about Zealots. When they formed as a team and the lineups were revealed, I looked at it and was just like, AD and Mopsio on the same team, that's never going to work. But they really found their flow, they found their synergy, and I feel at this tournament, every one of the members in this setup plays on their best level. Chris was always the guy that was extremely safe in the background, but once he committed to it, he got his kill, he got his damage. He usually waits until there's an opportunity. And here these opportunities are created by Mopsio playing probably the best tournament that they had so far. You go a year back and you see Mopsio being a big liability for his teams. Now he's the guy who makes the plays at the start. The taunt that we saw several times with Garrosh alone won them the game in the end when he was able to get on Genji, for example.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying, is they look a lot like, for me, last year, Roll20, in how they have so many different powerful picks. It's just enough for each person that they can rotate in, and nobody really gets countered in the draft. It's making things difficult for Tempo Storm, and they did have to play versus Zealots on Volskaya Foundry, which is of Zealots' choice. But we'll see now if Tempo Storm continues with the trend of first picks, as they did versus Team Dignitas, or if they switch something up. You know, Mike, I looked at that replay and I saw almost all the heroic cooldowns used to get that 1 kill on Zealots, and then Tempo Storm splitting on both the control point and the camp. So these kinds of mistakes just can't be made at this point, right? Like getting caught out from that, away from each other, and especially when you can blow people up like they can.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I don't even think it was that greedy coming out from the type of Tempo Storm. I mean, obviously their punish show was a little too greedy, but if Stukov's root is not reliable, right? That is the skill shot that generally is not consistently hit, but Shad has shown in this tournament that he consistently hits it on not just 1 hero, but 2 heroes, because if he doesn't hit that root, both those heroes are fine, they back up, Tyrael, Genji are able to flank from the left side, Malfurion comes in, and that's a 5v4, that, you know, Zealots is in a really rough spot, so like that's my thing is like, at first I watched it and I was like, did Tempo overextend? But I actually really don't think it was. I think so much of that was Shad hitting that 2-man root.
Well, Shad has shown this entire tournament, Vandy, and as we go to Sky Temple, do you expect that if Stukov is available again to Shad, that Zealots will be willing to draft it?
I 100% think that he will. But I mean, you and I were discussing, and I was like, I feel like they really need to focus on that Blaze, ban him out, because a lot of the plays, and we've also seen with Zealots, they're constantly prioritizing either first picking or even in their just first round of picks, they want that Blaze if he's not banned out. Whereas with the Stukov, if it is taken away from them or if it is banned, they have an answer, they have a solution for that, whereas less so the Blaze.
Yeah, also now with Sky Temple being the choice, we talked about it a bit earlier. Tempo Storm defeated the Zealots on this map, but the Zealots are the ones choosing the map because they have a 5-1 track record in the regular season here in Sky Temple. And they said that they were a bit surprised in the earlier series, in the first round, by how strong Tempo Storm was. And since then, a lot has happened. They're not underestimating them at all. But the draft is starting up the exact same way that we saw on the last map. So we have once again Tracer banned out against Zealots, making sure that Chris is not able to jump on by now the most successful damage dealer in this tournament. Tracer sitting at 13 wins and 5 losses. Maiev banned out, and Tyrael to break off that Blaze Tyrael combo that Tempo Storm just got absolutely destroyed by several times now.
Yeah, I'm curious, is this going to be a salty run back? I mean, Tempo doing the exact same draft opening, right? That basically screams to me, it was not draft. Draft was not the issue. We feel like we just didn't have the execution, which I mean, I think there is validity to that point. I feel like they played very well, and we are this is going to be the salty run back. Is Tempo going to pick something other than Malfurion and Genji here? That's what I'm curious. I feel like they probably will pick up. I mean, they're just both such strong heroes there. I guess maybe they wouldn't pick up the Genji.
Honestly, what I feel is that Stukov and the Blaze, they're just too good. Whereas that Tyrael, we've seen when Zealots doesn't get it, they're happy to replace it with the Garrosh or run something else. I feel like Tempo Storm, they might just be sort of playing into what Zealots are wanting here. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, really.
I mean, you can target the bans. You can have a very similar draft and then you go, for example, and ban out Medivh. The problem when you go up against Zealots is that if they get one of their really comfortable drafts and play a game that they are familiar with, it's very difficult to beat them. If you can push them out of that zone a bit and force your own gameplay on them, they have a much harder time reacting to it. There's some teams that we have that are very good reactionary. The Zealots are not necessarily one of them. So Tempo Storm has to try to maybe target ADRD a bit and try to make sure that his influence on the pace of the game is limited. If they can do that, I feel they have a very good shot of at least making this extremely close.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Tempo coming out with the Dahaka Genji as the response, so they don't opt in for that Malfurion. But you know, going along with what you were saying, Kaldor, is I feel like Tempo may be at a disadvantage because they don't know Zealots as well, right? A lot of these European teams, they scrim them every single day a week, right? Or not necessarily every day, but they scrim them every week. They play in them consistently, and Tempo doesn't have that luxury. They may not know what Zealots' comforts are. I mean, remember when Fnatic came out on Volskaya, instantly banned the Tastar, instantly banned the Medivh, took away the Stukov and the 2-3, and Tempo hasn't done that, right?
They still lost that game.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
And the reaction that we saw from Twitter immediately once the Tastar was banned out, a lot of the European pros coming in and saying, finally someone targeting the hero pool of ADRD and trying to push them out of their comfort zone. It didn't quite work out, but you could see that what you're saying is echoed by the European pros because they're saying this is a weakness that you can try to exploit.
Well, and that's why when we were leading into that Volskaya draft, I was like, and they are banning the Medivh. I would really like to see this, but that's when we were leading into the Volskaya draft, I was like, is Tempo gonna, follow in the suit of Fnatic? Because I very much felt like Fnatic lost on execution and not draft, and they are gonna ban that Medivh. I think this is a good decision, but are they just gonna pick Tastar, Kaldor?
Could definitely be one of the bans here. I just think it's insanely funny, at least for any caster that has ever casted consistently the European scene. It's super funny that eventually you will end up with Medivh banned out against ADRD. There's always going to be a little bit of a time when Medivh is going to let through, and then they're going to win 2-3 games, and everybody says, "Oh yeah, that's why we banned Medivh. Now we remember," and then they end up with it again.
Well, yes, the Medivh is now banned out, but what was, I guess, taking up that slot was the Abathur, who's now still available for play and also very, very formidable on the Sky Temple. So once again, I feel like Zealots, it's so hard to target ban them, so then where do you get them? Do you get them on a Battlegrounds? I mean, that's what I'd like to see Tempo Storm doing, but like you were saying, Mike, it feels as though they want to make sure that, okay, we're going to try this again, we're changing up a little bit of this, but we feel as though it's our execution that was lacking. And I mean, that could be said, yes, but to me, honestly, it just feels like Tempo Storm is just really struggling in just having the answers to when Zealots are able to push their game, how are we able to react? Because then they're the ones who have to react, right?
Yeah, I feel one of the things you have to do against Zealots is you can ban certain heroes, but don't try to pick too much. Like, try to get your own draft. Try to get a draft that you are familiar with, because you can't completely outdraft them. That is nearly impossible.
Exactly.
You can throw a wrench into the works of ADRD's like mastermind here. But outside of that, you need to make sure that you end up with a draft where you say, this is strong, we know how this works, and we can play with this. If you focus too much on disrupting what they have, you will end up in a really problematic situation.
Yeah, and Zealots have played both, but I want to put this into perspective. That game one was not a stomp in any fashion. And I feel like we've been saying, you know, Zealots have been doing so well in draft, which they have, but Tempo, the game ended at what, level 22, 23, and I really feel like that replay showed was the turning moment, right? Tempo was doing very well before that moment, but they kind of got snowballed on. The Kerrigan Uther coming out by Tempo Storm. I mean, I love Kerrigan as a hero. I feel like she's very strong, and I feel like this time they do not have the double support, so I feel like they will have enough damage, right? They have that Genji, and they have that Tyrael to help go in with the Kerrigan. I like this pick here. I don't feel like Zealots has that many threats. Generally, when I'm playing Kerrigan, the hero that I'm most afraid of is something like an ETC. They do go with Lunara. I feel like that's a really interesting pick. Generally, against Kerrigan, you want burst, but I mean, I guess they're going to go for the more slow fights, just exploit that Uther, which I mean, the strategy could work out, but they need to survive that initial burst coming out from Tempo.
Will the Tyrael shielding be enough to counteract that, or is it still going to be problematic for Tempo?
I mean, I don't think the shield counters it. What counters it is we're just going to speed up and run at you, and you're not going to be able to disengage.
Oh, that's fair.
And that's the thing is the Tyrael speed, I think, is going to help all of Tempo's heroes stay on the side of, you know, Zealots. Because, I mean, you look at Zealots, they don't really have that good of disengage. You have Bunker, but if you're in the bunker, what happens when the bunker dies, right? There's still a Kerrigan D-shielded Maelstreaming right next to you, or a Dragon-bladed, you know, D-shield.
Well, Kaldor, have Zealots run into a Kerrigan at all? Is this something that anybody really is playing in Europe?
They are the ones that have been playing Kerrigan in the past. So, not necessarily in 2018, but ADRD had a lot of these aggressive drafts. I have to say that before the last pick, I would have given it probably to Tempo, but I really feel that not picking Lunara earlier was them trying to make sure that Uther is being picked on the other side and exploiting that through Lunara. If they picked Lunara earlier, I felt they were afraid that maybe instead of Uther, another support is taken, they can deal with that easier. So originally, I looked at the draft was saying like Tempo Storm probably has this, but right now I feel Zealots got again what they want and also on the other side.
All right. Well, we'll let you give your prediction in a second as it comes down the line. We'll see if Tempo Storm in that amount of time can change your mind. We'll start at the end.
I'm going to give it to Tempo. I feel like they are a team that thrives on aggression and have drafted a very aggressive comp. So, you know, I would expect to see them come out, you know, just guns a-blazing and just go for it.
Andy?
With Tempo Storm, I mean, I really like the point that you brought up about, hey, you know, that was a very close game. I was seeing that as well. Like, normally when we've come up and seen teams against Zealots on Volskaya Foundry, they're ending it by the time we get to point C. You were saying they were about level 20, 21-ish, and then finally the game was ended. But in saying that, I still feel as though Zealots have the slightly stronger draft here, so I'm going to side with them.
I'm going to go with Tempo this time. I think they have a draft that they actually really like. And I think the Zealots can win it with what they have. But the problem that I have with this is I feel the execution has to be extremely on point on their part. We have the global on the side of Tempo. I don't think this is going to be a 3-0 series, and I think this is the game that Tempo wins.
Kaldor, welcome to the light. I just want to say voting for NA. I really appreciate it.
What is happening
production.
here?
Can we change it? No. Production, please swap it out. Just
Yeah, it's okay. He gave me crap last time, so we're even.
This is a pure, I'm voting with my heart. And I'm saying I do not want this to be a 3-0 either. And if they lose this game with this kind of draft with the carry and everything else, I don't see Tempo recovering from it. It has to be this game. So my vote is for Tempo Storm. And now we see, now we see, no, it's gone. That's it. Oh, wow. That was a huge swing. Zealots is convincing hearts and minds everywhere.
I think Europe was napping for an hour.
That could have been. Power nap. I hope two people that aren't napping, RJ Howe and Dreadnought. Guys?
Hey, anyways, Tempo Storm is going with what got them here, Dreadnought. Is it going to be enough here in game 2?
I share almost identical sentiments to everybody on the panel. That this is, I feel like a lot of pressure on Tempo. This is their play style. If they're going to win the game and turn things around, it's going to start here.
Well, we're going to see if they can do it as Zealot stands in the way up 1-0. It's Zarmany one more time on Blaze. Shad on that Stukov. Mopsio on Johanna. ADRD on a very familiar Tassadar. And Chris going to be pumping out that poison on Lunara.
And for Tempo Storm with the aggro death ball composition, Caterpillar on Tyrael, Glorong is going to be on Dahaka, Genji played by Fan, Psalm on his Kerrigan, and June on Uther.
We're going to see no Malfurion this time for Uther, see if he can support that heavy death ball composition, because when they go in, Dread, they are all in. We'll see if that's going to be enough. And one of the best ways to deal with the death ball composition is have a big AoE silence underneath you. Stukov does that pretty well.
He does do a very good job at that. But the last game, talking about, sanctification, the use of it, how are they going to be able to coordinate? One thing I do like with this composition for Tempo Storm, and still seeing that first pick Tyrael come out from them, is the fact that normally it's kind of difficult to find what fights do we want. If you have a 5-man all-in composition, it's pretty clear. Is everybody else going? If yes, then I'm going to drop the sanctification. Normally maybe the sanctification before the rest, but it's very easy to stay on the same page as a unit. And that's something I think Tempo Storm can hopefully depend on here and even out this series.
I'm really curious to see how this plays out, because it seems like Zealots has a composition to counter that. But Sky Temple, obviously you can find ways to play around team fights. You get 1 or 2 picks, you can control both temples and find yourself in a strategical position, an advantage to be able to just play around the temples, get those structures down, because a lot of it does, Dreadnought, come down to the temples and the objective on this map.
I very much agree with you, and even more so, with the global for Tempo Storm, the fact that they have that opportunity to try and be, a little bit pressuring if they can open up the top or middle fort. But there's also Blaze from Zarme, which is not only going to match well into the Dahaka if that becomes a problem, at least in the wave clear. It's obviously not a global, but it still can hold its own. But it's the fact that we still see Zarmany get his Blaze. And against this kind of deathball composition, any kind of counter momentum is a must-have. And he has been so effective with the bunker that I really feel like that Tempo Storm has to find a way to bait out the cooldown, or at least put pressure onto him to force him to panic.
That bunker is definitely tough. And you had mentioned Dahaka. This is something we've seen from Glaurung at least recently when it comes to these death ball compositions. Going into the questing talent, not that extra movement speed when he comes out of that brush stalker, but instead going for the extra max essence. And when he does that, he generally goes at 13. Instead of going the big AoE like armor reduction, he goes into the extra auto attack damage based on how much essence you have. So he does tend to mix this up a little bit. We'll see at level 13 whether he goes towards that AoE style or maybe that individual attack style to try and hit that backline.
A lot of people underestimate how much auto attack damage you can do when you do sit at the full stacks with that. The split push pressure, if you have any minions to just kind of wail away with auto attacks, it really does help out with the Dahaka beyond the fact that your single target DPS in a team fight is going to be that much more impactful. 30 more seconds away from our first Shrine phase as Zealots with that Night Camp gets a lot of free damage onto the top front wall. But we also see that Dahaka has got the Giants down below to try and get that split push and even out this experience. Right now, Zealots got far more than we typically see in an early game Sky Temple rotation and macro, but into a 5-man melees, it makes sense. Generally speaking, you're going to be matching your opponents. You don't win in the wave clear unless you get kills, and Zealots is playing it safe.
They're playing it super safe, and justifiably so, as we see Glaurung landing that tongue, but that it will be a Johanna that can make her way out. Blaze, as Zarmany goes down, you can see the rotation on the minimap as the action will be at this top and middle temple. See if Tempo Storm tries to take a fight.
Tempo controls I, which means nobody sees the Psalm. Chris is going to get left onto. Combo goes down. First blood here with the aggro comp for Tempo Storm, but they body block Mopsio out. He doesn't have enough. Oh, he does have the Iron Skin available and the Tacittar shield, so he's going to make it out. But Tempo had Uther top that entire time, consuming those shots, and that is a huge victory for them over the first Shrine phase.
I mean, if you got Tyrael there, it's like an added secondary support, and I think that Zealot's a little bit lucky. Kerrigan going Blade of Momentum at 7. A few auto attacks in there might have been able to land another combo, so that is a very scary thing moving forward when you are Psalm on Kerrigan to try and push that pressure onto Zealots, who are losing quite a bit of these first 2 temples right now.
Yeah, for how much Zealots was able to get before the Shrine phase, it's pretty amazing that Tempo Storm off of that 1 kill was able to kind of restore the balance. If anything, they gained the advantage because of that top fort falling so very low for Zealots. Zealots who did end up finishing off these middle shots. So I want to bring up the control over that middle eye. I can't help but feel like Chris in the positioning around that middle shrine. I mean, when you play on Sky Temple, the time sensitivity and how fast you get on the objective is very, very important. And if you do not control vision over mid and you don't have anybody who can withstand this kind of all-in initiation, it feels like I would have liked to see him be a bit more patient. And that was maybe, when we heard the analyst guys talking about the Lunar pick, is it going to be worth it, is it not, that it might have been a bit risky.
A little bit risky. Glaurung going up top, being zoned out for the moment. When he does hit that W key, allows him to pass through heroic targets. Does just that, walks his way to safety. Tempo Storm finds themselves about 3/4 of a level up. This is kind of what we expect from Tempo Storm. An aggressive composition with a Kerrigan and team that can invade camps, do things like this, clear things quickly and take control. This is what they've been known to do. That's why they're here in the top 3. But they have been struggling today. I think this might be the time we see them turn it around.
Zealots is now falling far enough behind in the earlier stages. Zarmany actually is going to get the drag. All of Tempo Storm is making the transition, so much so that I don't see any way out unless he can get jet propulsion. He's going to go ahead and use it away by time. How much does Zealots get elsewhere on the map? Because now he's dead. It's just what is Tempo Storm losing in terms of the map pressure? And the answer is a Genji on bottom and a whole front wall. Who comes out on top in this situation?
I think that's definitely going to be the fact that it depends on how far this pushes, right?
Yeah.
You get the wall down, you get the next temple shots, they're going to take that well, giving you that advantage on the next temple phase. So it might be short-term advantage, but even longer term.
What I would say, if I was to kind of give it, I would actually very much give it to Zealots, just based on the fact that buying that much time within a gank, based on the experience and the timing of the next shrine.
They didn't even get the fort up there.
Yeah, it was...
That's got to hurt a little.
Yeah, and just by the fact that they were able to buy that much time and the experience was, you know, kind of sitting in that moment, will Tempo Storm have the 10 advantage without Zealots? And what are they going to do in that window? By getting that kill and the double experience on bottom, it's secured that Zealots has a perfect 10 versus 10. They can hold their own over the objective. And not even counting the fact that Tempo Storm, though, they do have that top 4 on reserve if they want to end up going towards that. Aaron ends up dropping, and when do we see them move in? We're yet to see what Heroic Shad is going to collect. Ends up going with a flailing swipe over the massive shove.
I'm actually surprised a little bit. I think if you can play that max range, we see Thornwood Vines, but sometimes we'll see Lunara players go into that leaping strike just to make sure you can dodge some of that heavy dive that comes in, whether it's the Genji or whether it's the Kerrigan. You know, we also have a camp that's pushing top, but we might have a fight breaking out here at the bottom. Psalm is getting annihilated in this backside in the early part of the fight.
Yeah, it even drove out the cleanse from June. No full all-in initiation yet from Tempo Storm fan. It's going to go ahead and mount up into that side shrub. Zealots eventually need to respond to the night camp pressuring towards top, or it will get a little bit of free damage onto the top half, but it doesn't look they have any interest. They're going to take this fight, and keep in mind, if Tempo Storm get the combo or the all-in initiation that they want with this type of composition, I don't know if Zealots can hold their own, so instead they play it safer. Blaze ends up getting the back here, and they're feigning like they have interest in trying to punish Tempo Storm, even though they're outmanned.
They're out, man. That was a major push in that top lane that warranted the attention. Tempo Storm, now they're turning their attention maybe to rotate up to some other lanes, try and find another advantage. I'm surprised that they're not just trying to confirm structures while they're still in the 5-man. They didn't confirm that fort necessarily at the beginning. They obviously thought long-term that would clear through natural creep and then, of course, that camp. But you got to wonder, could they be forcing more rotations out by finishing some of these structures and that tower being left there when you're already ahead? Maybe get close to 13.
I agree with you, and on the opposite side of the table here, I can't help but feel like Zealots there had a bit of moment where you could tell they were not confused, but not always on the same page of what they want to be doing. Because if you're going to be able to forfeit that bottom objective after the initiation, it feels like the back should have been a smidge earlier from them, but it doesn't cost them too much. It's just a bit of damage onto the top key front wall, which for a long while we aren't going to be too concerned with, as we are only after our first altar phase.
Dread, this part is always my favorite on Sky Temple, when you have top and bottom temples and a boss still available. It's an early boss, so it's not exactly the worst thing in the world that you give up, but it always is a point of contention. The one thing that Tempo Storm does have is the global in this map.
Wow, a lot of damage there. The looking Shad with the lurking arm again. Genji just pretty much 100-0, but below, Chris is in a really bad position. He's already gotten the Tassadar shield, but Psalm is unable to get the Maelstrom to get the kill. He goes back in, he goes for the combo, dimensional shift, it turns it, sanctification, the bunker is there, and a kill on ADRD.
The ADRD kill is there. They're hopping in the bunker, but this is a death ball composition directly on top. Fans got the Dragon Blade out. There goes Psalm and team hopping in. Zarmany gets pulled back in. The Swift Strike in and out. And there's Tempo Storm bringing the pain, Dread.
They're bringing the pain, and they're about to bring a boss. There's no way the Zealots can contest this. When the boss is pushing down below, it's going to lead to a lot of free shots. They have to put some consideration towards when they want to respond to the night camp. But they'll, you know, this is a moment where Zealots have to hit an opportunity where I feel like they have to be overactive with their disadvantage and experience with the 13 and 16, because if all the shots are consumed by Tempo Storm and they play this appropriately, I think it's very likely that the 16 plus the full level spike, and then we hit that kind of Sky Temple snowball that we've seen, especially out of Korea.
Definitely a lot to be considered as Tempo Storm has now regained some semblance of their old selves, and they're doing it behind a composition they know how to run.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Not fully committing to the clear on the boss, trying to, see if Tempo Storm gets out too far in any part of the map, because 16 is going to be ticking away.
Luther.
There's so many shots on bottom, so many on top. June.
Okay, there's not enough follow-up. Dahaka has now entered the fray. He gets the tongue, he gets the drag. Unstoppable as the Iron Skin is out. The combo does some damage, but we're missing a few key heroics, but Divine Shield is up if Tempo Storm can keep going here.
Mopsio gets dragged in, goes in, but look at the combo onto Chris. He goes into the bunker, immediately gets blown up, and Chris is going to go down here as he's skirting around in the back line. They end up getting the kill on the Mopsio as well. Combo number 2 comes in, and that is a dead Blaze. Genji goes in trying to get the dismount, gets the dimensional shift, and now 3 for nothing. Tempo Storm, they just unleash.
They unleashed, and you gotta feel bad, because I think one of the things that might have been the death of one of the heroes on the side of Zealots was deflect. And when you're ADRD on a Tassadar, it's based on the number of auto attacks that are received. There's so much that went on here. Shad being under assault, and the minute Fan goes in, I mean, there's really no threat to him whatsoever.
Just, you can see, you brought up the idea of going with the Thornwood Vine versus the Leaping Strike, and I agree with everything you had to bring up. And I feel like that exact situation, you can see the thought process on why they didn't. It's like, well, we have the bunker. That's going to be the thing to keep us alive. Maybe Johanna out there can, be zoning long enough to keep Chris up. But it just, with this much offense on the side of Tempo Storm, it doesn't feel like it leaves even a fraction of a second for defense for Chris.
3-level lead. Tempo Storm has just kind of regrouped. They have all forts down. They have some keep wall damage. They've now obtained a camp. If the fight breaks out, they can fall down, fight underneath that spell armor. But I don't think Zealots wants anything to do with this. They need to be happy with what they got, but the poison damage from Lunara, the stun, the silence coming in, Dread.
Divine Shield is going to be used. Combo misses. Bunker is there. Lunar is going to get in that. And look at Tempo Storm. They're very, very weak. 5 seconds for Sanctification. Maelstrom is going to come up, but Tempo looks like they are going to have to back out for now, get a tap. They still have 16 talent here. And then I expect them to turn things back on and really finish the rest of these shots. This is a moment where Zealots may be biting off or getting a little bit too aggressive if they end up committing back.
Lunara did so much damage to Genji that he dipped out, and that's him on the minimap. He went down, he showed to that minion wave, and I think that's why Zealots was so confident in their positioning. Fan does have well tap.
I agree with you when it comes to the decision making, but Tempo Storm playing so passive with the ability to back out tap and Genji going mid, it just feels like they forfeited a huge advantage.
I think nerves might be coming in here.
Yeah.
After getting 3-0'd earlier, dropping the first one here, it was a risky thing. They were missing a couple of big heroics there. They saw the amount of poison damage. Genji, the re-engage was definitely there, but I think they're afraid. I mean, with the structure advantage, they're playing it extremely safe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when we bring in how, the series in today has gone here for Tempo Storm, that when they get the lead like this on a map like Sky Temple, where you have a structural advantage too, it's probably one of the best maps that you can play overly safe and rely on being like, you know what, I have the advantage here and here, which means I have to really, really make a big mistake, and we don't want to risk that without those heroics. It's just one of those moments where it goes like, are you giving your opponent a little too much and giving them too many windows to come back? Because it does feel like historically with the NA versus EU that we get at the Western Clash more often than not, that case is right there is why Europe can always come back in these games and be the, the dominant region.
Dread, are you ready for that window?
I am.
Because it's about to happen.
Yeah,
it's called 16 here for Zealots, and it's a single Temple phase. Tempo is one of those situations where like, we're not that far ahead to where we can give up a full Temple, right? Because that just allows Zealots back in the game. So now you are going to be in a fight. They're going to try and get 20 as best they can. You can imagine that timer will be here momentarily. So Tempo Storm, they might have a little bit of a delay. There it is, 30 seconds. You can't get 20 in the duration of that Temple. So what do they do?
You can forfeit, and try and rely on Glaurung onto the side lane, draw aggro from Zealots, hope you get, rotational misplay, which seems to be what they're trying to kind of do now, rather than addressing the full team fight. Can we get a pick elsewhere? Good anchoring, though, from Zarman. He kind of deters that play. And now the response. ADRD is not here if Mopsio went for that initiation. He's going to play it slow for now. Dahaka making the transition down, and Tempo Storm's going to start at the shots.
This is a time where I remember
he's going to back it out.
He's going to back it out. But this is a time where a team like Fnatic, they would hard push that top key.
Yeah.
Right? And it would force a back out for Zealots. Then you could sneak somebody down into the bottom. You force multiple members, and it looks like Tempo Storm is going to put some pressure onto that top lane. And I think this is kind of one of the best calls. It's a very EU flavor that we saw last year. It's going to force the back out from multiple members, but with only so many showing. Dahaka's hiding at the bottom, but now Dahaka's showing. He has the global to get up there, but Tempo cannot stay here too long.
They can't stay too long at all. Blaze is still showing on bottom. He's going to mount up, make the rotation out. Tempo Storm understood the situation. Dahaka consumes the shots down below. That will just be enough to be able to get the keep for them. First keep of the game. Not enough for 20 Spike, but very, very close.
Dread for Zealots. Sometimes you get desperate, sometimes it calls for desperate calls. The boss is up and available. Level 20, however, for Tempo Storm. Are you at that desperation moment just yet to where you have to force a potential throw pit even
Genji
down
just
the
switched
20
up,
here?
and he used his D. If they get the reveal at all. Ooh, nobody's going to make the rotation down.
20's here. Sonic Echo forcing the dismounts. You can see the flank coming in. And it looks like Zealots is ready to take that fight. Thornwood binds, goes out, gets the poison damage in. Zarmany coming in with the stun.
A lot of damage there, Shad, but a huge combo there from Psalm. Immediately, 2 members go into the bunker. Sanctification is there, and Tempo Storm is waiting as Zealots just go into a death pit out of that bunker. Combo number 3 is going to land onto Zarmany, and after that reset, number 4, Tempo wipes all of Zealots.
Zarmany was part of that as Zealots goes down without a keep standing in the way. Tempo Storm, they turn the tides. They're flexing on them. It was 12 kills to 2, I believe, in favor of Zealots. This time around, Tempo Storm coming out. Dread, you said, and everybody else said, that if Tempo Storm was going to take a game, it has to be running a composition that they know, that we've seen them, what got them here, seems to be working. We've got ourselves a series now as that's going to be tied 1-1. Zealots versus Tempo Storm.
Very impressive performance there from Tempo Storm, even taking a minute to have an advantage in macro play with the death ball composition. Normally we see those teams, you know, it's just like your win condition are always going to be trying to just all in and try and get that fight, but the manipulation towards that top keep and that play around there, I mean, Zealots did a good job of deterring it in the first attempt, but they still just make the rotations, make the play, get the back out, and that really kind of forced the hands. Mopsio again tried to go for kind of a unique play, as you could see him waiting in the shrub, and that's part of the reason that Kerrigan was able to open with such an insane start to that team fight. I'm still, you know, I feel like Zealots, though it was lopsided, I can't help but feel like they still played it pretty well for the most part. It's a very hard composition to deal with if the combo hits the right target.
It is, and I think that was the difference between compositions. It's a matter of like, look, we're going to play our best, we're going to play against your best. And I think it really came down to it. The Lunara, again, I think the damage is fine, a lot there, but you got to wonder if Leaping Strike might have been a little bit more of a savior in key moments. For dive compositions like that, look, I'm not Chris, right? Chris is one of the best in the world, but I see these happen way too often. It always makes me wonder, like, what if, right? The poison damage is there against an Uther, it makes sense, but what happens when you get behind and you're playing with your heels falling backwards as a team is coming directly at you?
I very much agree. You know, it is one of those, if that is the win condition, like, is it worth the trade-off and the risk? And you very much can see the justification for the Lunara pick, especially into the Uther. It's just, it's one of those ones that I'm always like, you know what? I play on the safe side. I'm like, pick me the Tychus, pick me the Beefcake, just don't give them the singular win condition. But Tempo, they kind of force the hand. You know, he's starting as early as that middle shrine, or no, like level 4, right? Chris over the Eye of Vision, so I'm just opened up, and from then on, it was Tempo Storm's game.
That was Tempo Storm's game, and it's going to be Gilly's panel as we head back over there as they give us a recap on how Game 2 played out here.
Yes, quite. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is my desk. Tempo Storm, their faces showed nothing but relief after that game. They knew, just as well as we did, how crucial that victory was.
Yeah, if they fall behind with an 0-2 after just being destroyed with an 0-3 by Dignitas, then I think that would have been lights out no matter what. From a psychological aspect, you would have been broken, and coming back from that position would have been nearly impossible. So that was really when they needed desperately.
Especially with the type of composition that they had, Vandy.
I'm just so glad that now we've got a series on our hands. I'm so excited. I mean, my prediction was like, you know, I'm happy with Zealots, but I'm so glad I got proven wrong. And watching Tempo Storm, in the morning I had so much confidence in them. I'm like, it's a little bit shaky, but watching the Kerrigan, finally now, the way they wanted to execute, taking these fights, the way that they needed to, it was just wonderful to watch, really. And like you said, the relief on their faces, I feel so glad for them.
Yeah, they tie up the series. Mike, which Kerrigan combo you got to show us?
How did you know? I have an amazing replay. It is going to be the very last team fight. I want you to pause right here. So look at Psalm on this Kerrigan. He is beelining, and nothing is going to stop him. You need to watch him. He's going to use his level 20 talent up here, this Bolt of the Storm. He's going to bolt right about here and combo both of these backliners. And at that point, the fight is basically won, because you get a combo on 2 backliners. They're in a terrible position. You're going to see Fan coming with the Genji. He's going to use his E, and he's going to use his Dragon Blade. So you can start rolling it in slow motion. Fan, watch, Psalm right here with the Kerrigan, blinking. Boom. there's the combo, hitting Shad and Chris, your 2 priority targets. The bunker does drop, but Shad is basically at 10% HP at this point, and the beautiful Sank coming out by Cattle here, just helping them all. Fans just trying to 1v1 a Tassadar on the side, but it doesn't matter, right? Because the fight is won, because Psalm hit that beautiful blink combo, and this is literally the fight that wins the game, because right after this, Tempo just runs it down bottom, gets on that core, and evens up this series.
What I loved about that play in particular too is there was a moment where Tempo Storm backed off with a 16 advantage. And the casting desk was talking about it. Yes, you could do that on Sky, but it seemed like the nerves were maybe getting to them just a little bit. There have been plays where we have wondered that about Tempo Storm, but in that moment, they went for the fight. They didn't go for the boss, they went for the fight. They were decisive, and they were rewarded, tying up our series. And I am so glad that we don't have a possible 3-0 here in this series now, as we've had them throughout the day, and I'm ready for these 2 teams to bring it. We're gonna go to a commercial break. When we come back, these 2 teams, Tempo Storm and Zealots, will bring it for Game 3.